talk about grace-based parenting, raising children in grace. The question always comes up, do you spank your children? I'm not even going to justify that with an answer. Ask my children. But let me ask you this. Why do our minds always go there? We're going to raise our children in grace. Do you spank? How do you go from there to there? Why do we go from there to there? Let's think about this. Is spanking biblical? Sure it is. Absolutely. Foolishness is bound in the heart of a child, Proverbs 22:15, but the rod of correction will drive it far from him. Sure it is. And with that thought in mind, should it be a tool as we nurture and admonish our children? Sure should. Absolutely. Look at Ephesians chapter 6 once. Ephesians chapter 6. Ephesians 6:1 says, "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right." What happens when our children don't obey their parents? What is an option that could happen? A spanking, right? Absolutely. I love that he answered that, not a parent. That's rich right there. Yeah. If children don't obey their parents, listen, since you brought it up, see, I didn't even have to say it, he did. I got my fair share when I was a kid. We could probably all share stories. We probably all got our fair share of whoopings when we were kids. And it probably had something to do with we probably weren't obeying our parents. Certainly. But look at verse 4. Verse 4 says, "And ye fathers." Who's he talking to? Dads. "Ye fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord." I would like to put out there that while spanking is certainly something that is necessary, it is something that changes attitudes at times. I would also put out there that there's a whole lot of times when, or maybe I should say it this way, I think there needs to be a whole lot more nurturing and admonishing. A whole lot more nurturing and admonishing needs to take place than spanking in the life of a child. I'm not saying we don't do that. You know, many years ago, I went to a trade school outside of Philadelphia. It was a little over 14 miles from Media to Jefferson Station in downtown Philadelphia. And in February, I was in horticulture, so in February, we would get on the train and we would ride the SEPTA train into Jefferson Station and get off and go and work at the Philadelphia Flower Show, getting it ready, setting it up, working the show, tearing it down. And if you've never been there, it's a really cool thing to go to. But it's like summer in the beginning of March inside. It's wild. It's wild what they do. But anyway, sometimes we would go down in the morning. We'd get the train, we'd go down in the morning, and 14 miles, 14 stops, and that train would fill up with all of these well-dressed people heading to work in their business suits and all of that. But we oftentimes would work the second shift, and the trains ran till 1:30 in the morning. And we would probably get on the last train out at about midnight, 12:30. We'd be done at 12, get on the train by 12:30. And it was about an hour to get back out to the last stop. And let's just say the midnight crowd was a slightly different crowd than the morning crowd. It drew the finest audience. And here we are, a bunch of college guys, and we would get on that train and we would be packed in there with all of just the the finest people in society. And as we would head out of town, the train would be full. But at every stop along the way, more and more people would get off that train. They would choose to take an earlier exit than ours. It was only us who rode all the way to the end. Now, why do I tell you that? Because that's kind of like parenting, isn't it? We're raising these children, and we need to nurture and admonish them regularly. But as we nurture and admonish them, they're hopefully going to choose one of those exits. So they're doing something maybe that is not the wisest choice, maybe not the best choice, and we nurture them and we admonish them. And we admonish, by the way, is gentle correction. And we're going to get to that in just a minute. But you're gently correcting that child along the way, step after step after step, and you keep praying that they take one of those exits. You know, but it's a very select few who decide to ride the train all the way to the end. And it's for those select riders that sometimes Proverbs 22:15 needs to be applied. But let me ask you something. And sometimes we have to hit that exit a little sooner than we prefer, and probably more sooner than they prefer as well. But here's the thing. How often do we hit that last exit? Everybody know what I'm talking about at this point? Spanking? Everybody with me so far? Okay, just making sure. It's early. How often do we hit that last exit? No pun intended with the hit. How often do we arrive at that last exit of spanking? Not because necessarily the child was needing it as much as we became frustrated. We overreacted. We got tired of, because listen, parenting can be tiring, can't it? Parenting can be frustrating. And I am not about to tell you that I am perfect. But sadly, how often do our children bear the brunt of our punishment? Because I had a bad day. And they did something that maybe was probably deserving of gentle reminder. But I had a bad day at work. Anybody ever want to admit to that? Your kids get the punishment for something because, okay, well, I'll admit it. And the rest of you are liars. We're not perfect, are we? My prayer for us is that we never get to that place because of our hearts.